Hello, and welcome to The Art of Being Human. Today, this is what I want to do. I'm going to give you a list of drugs, including alcohol, and even including caffeine if we get to it, just what people take for drugs. And I'm going to tell you what it's like or what the symptoms are of overdose and what the symptoms are for withdrawal symptoms if a person is trying to get off the drugs. Now, this is a whole list of drugs that I have, cocaine, the opioids, and all of that. So it's unlikely that if you're watching the show that all of these would be applicable to you or to your loved ones. But I'm doing it drug by drug by drug. And the reason I'm doing that is that you may have loved ones on drugs, maybe a family member, maybe a friend. You may be attending a party with somebody that is using drugs. And the thing is, you need to know if they've gone too far. You need to know if they've gone over the line. To me, I don't use drugs at all. So for me, anything is over the line. But if I have a friend of yours that's taking drugs, when do you know this is time that's so serious that it's time to call an ambulance? This is the time to grab a person and take them home, even if they don't want to go home, that you will drive them home, not have them drive, but you drive them. And so I want to go through this drug by drug. And as if you're taking drugs yourself, I think you need to know in advance what your symptoms are going to be if you continue on the drug, and what your withdrawal symptoms are going to be like should you decide to get off the drug, because drugs are not pleasurable. After you're addicted to them, the reason that you continue to take them is that you're sick if you don't take them, because the withdrawal symptoms can be so difficult that you actually can die from them, or you can become so impaired by them. Now, usually you get over it after a period of time, but you can be mighty sick before that period of time is ended. And then the cravings begin and you want to get back to it. And usually if you're going to go into a program in order to get off drugs, it takes several tries at rehab before it finally clicks in. Now, some people can do it by themselves, but that's rare. It's rare that anyone can do it by themselves. You really need help. So I'm going to start off with alcohol. If you're a drinker, here are the symptoms of use. You become aggressive. You have poor judgment. You have impaired attention. You're irritable. You have euphoria, depression, emotional lability, and what that means is your emotions change. You're high, you're low, you're happy, you're sad. You have a big change of emotions within a relatively short period of time. Slurred speech, incoordination, unsteady gait, and flushed face. All of those things you can have if you have had too much alcohol. So what about the withdrawal symptoms? Well, it begins usually 4 to 6 hours after your last drink. And this is what the withdrawal can be like. Tremors, that means you're shaking. Tremors, nausea, vomiting, malaise, that just means that you don't feel good generally. Weakness, tachycardia, that means that your heart's not beating right. You can have changes in your heartbeat. Sweating, high blood pressure, anxiety, depression, irritability, hallucinations, headache, insomnia, seizures, and you can have delirium tremens, which is a lot of shaking on the second or third and fourth day. And then gradually it subsides. So these are very serious withdrawal symptoms, but the symptoms of use are also serious, and you can get yourself in a whole lot of trouble, and you can make yourself very sick. That's just alcohol. Now, what about amphetamines? We're talking about Dexedrine, Ritalin, other kinds of amphetamines that kind of pump you up. Well, the symptoms of use will be fighting, grandiosity, and what you need to know about that. The person who is grandiose, they believe that they're so much better than everybody else. They're so much more powerful. They're so much smarter. And it's like the whole mental attitude is, I'm superior and you're nothing, that kind of thing. So they have the grandiosity. They're hypervigilant. They have to watch everything, make sure that everything's going all right. They have to just watch and watch and watch. Psychomotor psychomotor agitation is when they've got to be constantly moving. Impaired judgments. Tachycardia, again, the heartbeat not right. The pupils dilate, high blood pressure, perspiration, chills, nausea, and vomiting. These are with the amphetamines. What are the withdrawal symptoms? Now, withdrawal symptoms peak in 2 to 4 days, but you have a lot of depression and irritability, and these symptoms can last off and on for months, but these are the symptoms: anxiety, depression, irritability, craving the drug, fatigue, insomnia, psychomotor agitation. I mentioned that before. I'm going to take a little period of time and I'm going to define what some of these terms mean. Paranoia, suicidal ideation. Now, these symptoms are a little different than they are with alcoholism. The paranoia, suicidal ideation, where a person wants to kill themselves. When a person has suicidal ideation, they are thinking about killing themselves. That's what that term means. And if they're serious about it, they're usually hospitalized for their own protection so that their lives can be saved. Because sometimes they, even though they don't want to kill themselves, in some ways they do want to kill themselves. And it is possible for a person to kill themselves by accident, not intending to die, but getting too far into the process of practicing and making what's called suicide moves, and in the end, killing themselves. So these are the symptoms. And you know, it seems like fatigue and insomnia would be two opposites, but a person can be very, very tired but not be able to sleep, especially with an amphetamine. And the paranoia, when you believe everybody's against you, and a person feels that everybody is against them, and everybody is their enemy, and they don't have any friends, and that's why they become hypervigilant. They've got to watch everything to make sure that their enemies don't get to them. It's very serious. It must be terrible to go through these symptoms. It's easy enough for a person just to read off a bunch of symptoms, but if you can imagine a person going through it, suffering these symptoms, several of them at the same time, a person might not have all these symptoms, but they may have several of them at the same time, and that must be agonizing for them. So at any rate, this is the amphetamines. Going on to the next one here. Whoops. Caffeine. Now, here are the symptoms of caffeine use. And I want to mention lots of people use caffeine. Cola, both diet and non-diet cola, tea, coffee, chocolate, and in sleeping medications. And there's all kinds of medications, cocoa, painkillers, cold medications, they all have caffeine in them. These are the symptoms of caffeine use: restlessness, nervousness, being excited, being insomniac, in other words, not able to sleep, a flushed face, diuresis, which means you have to go to the bathroom a lot to urinate, gastrointestinal problems, your digestion isn't right, the muscles twitch, the speech and the thought just ramble, the cardiac arrhythmia, that means that your heart is not beating properly, inexhaustibility, when you feel like you can't sleep, you don't want to sleep, you're just inexhaustible, you can just do whatever you want to do. That's why people take no-dose. This is why people drink scads of coffee if they're going to stay up all night to study, because they want the caffeine to keep them awake. And the psychomotor agitation, always moving, can't sit still. Now, the withdrawal symptom is headache, basically. And the caffeine is included, and I gave you this list before, but I'll just go over it again. Coffee, tea, soft drinks, cocoa, chocolate, painkillers, cold medication, and that probably isn't a complete list. Now, caffeine is a stimulant. And most Americans drink 2 cups of coffee a day. And there can be anywhere from 90 milligrams of caffeine to 200 milligrams of caffeine. I've read it all within that range in a cup of coffee. It partly depends upon the strength of the coffee, the kind of the coffee, and the size of the cup that you're drinking it from. So anywhere from 90 to 200 milligrams. At 90% of the populations consume at least 500 to 600 milligrams of caffeine a day. A lot of people, they drink coffee all day. All day, a cup of coffee. Well, if there's 200 milligrams in a cup of strong coffee and you're drinking it all day, you're going way over the limit of 400 milligrams being safe. So a lot of people go way over the limit. And the symptoms of use: anxiety, insomnia, and also depression. It increases the activity of the neurotransmitters. It changes the function of the neurotransmitters. And caffeine ingestion will give also the following things: increased heart rate, palpitation, that's when your heart is pounding; arrhythmias, that's when your heart is not correctly beating; and it increases the sizes of the blood vessels in the lungs, and it constricts the brain blood vessels. You know, you have blood vessels that go from the circulatory system into the brain. That gets constricted. That's not good. But it may increase the size of the vessels in the lungs. So you can get into trouble if the circulatory system is not functioning properly, either the way that it flows, the size of the blood vessels. Do they increase in size? Do they decrease in size? We know that smoking decreases and shrinks them up, and that causes problems. So you can get into trouble by using too much caffeine. But a lot of people use it, and I'm not suggesting that you stop using it. I'm not suggesting that you stop drinking cola or that you stop drinking coffee, but you need to be reasonable about the amount that you ingest, because it does have some decided impact upon the way that your body functions. Caffeine also has a diuretic effect on the kidneys, and that means you may be going to the bathroom a lot. Taking any more than 250 milligrams of caffeine a day is considered to be intoxication. There is an intoxication that has occurred by taking too much caffeine. But these are the symptoms of the intoxication. It's not exactly the same as being drunk, when we usually consider intoxication when a person is drunk too much. But this is a special intoxication that has been caused by too much caffeine usage, which some scientists say is over 250 milligrams a day, although 400 milligrams a day is considered to be safe for most people. Here are the symptoms of the intoxication: restlessness, nervousness, excitement, insomnia, not able to sleep, flushed face, diuresis, which means going to the bathroom a lot, gastrointestinal disturbances, the muscles twitch, there's a rambling thoughts and rambling speech. In other words, you can't really quite get it together. You may be awake if you're trying to study for a test, but you can't quite put it together. Your thoughts are rambling. They're not in orderly fashion. In other words, the tachycardia, which is the heartbeat once again, arrhythmia, which is a change in the heartbeat, and feeling that you can't be exhausted, and psychomotor agitation. Now, some of these are going to be perhaps very similar to being drunk, having too much alcohol, but it is an intoxication that is caused by too much caffeine. Now, what is caffeine withdrawal like? I have a list here. Headache, I've mentioned headache before, but it can be also fatigue, anxiety, irritability, depression, nausea, vomiting, muscle pain and stiffness of the muscles, impaired motor performance, and craving of caffeine. You know, caffeine, you can crave it. How many people do you know get up and they don't feel good until they've had that first cup of coffee? I've known people, in order to wake up, they've had to have 3 or 4 cups of coffee before they wake up, because the caffeine, they need the caffeine to wake them up, especially if they're busy, they're too tired, you know, so much going on. They depend upon caffeine to wake them up. Now, here are some sources of caffeine in terms of the milligrams and what you eat. A 5 or 6 ounce brewed cup of coffee has anywhere from 90 to 125 milligrams of caffeine. A 5 to 6 ounce of instant coffee has a little less, 60 to 90 milligrams of caffeine. A 5 to 6 ounce of decaffeinated coffee has maybe 3. You can't get off of caffeine completely, but 3 is not very many if you're drinking decaf. How does a coffee become decaf? How do they take the caffeine out? Well, sometimes they use formaldehyde, which of course is dangerous in itself. But there, I think, are other methods now as well. A 5 to 6 ounce of brewed tea has 70 milligrams of caffeine. 5 to 6 ounces of instant tea has 45 milligrams of caffeine. An 8 to 12 ounce cup of cola, some kind of cola, will have 60 milligrams of caffeine. A 5 to 6 ounce of cocoa, hot cocoa, will have 20 milligrams. 8-ounce chocolate milk has 2 to 7 milligrams. 1 ounce of a chocolate bar has 22. Aspirin has some in it. It has 32 milligrams of caffeine in aspirin. Anacin, Midol, Excedrin has 65 milligrams of caffeine. And NoDoz, which is, I don't know if they even make it anymore, that people buy it so they will stay awake because it has so much caffeine in it. A pill of NoDoz has 100 milligrams of caffeine. That's quite a bit. I want to mention about the Midol, Anacin, Midol, and Excedrin. Midol is a product that's used by women to handle menstrual cramps, and it's fairly effective. I know a man, this is just something that I thought of in talking about it. I know a man who used to have a lot of bad migraines, and he traveled a lot. He went to school and he checked their equipment for photocopiers, and they did any repairs that needed to be made. I mean, he was like a traveling salesman, but he did repairs on schools' equipment, various equipment like photocopiers. Well, he had a migraine. He told me about this. He said he had a migraine and he didn't know what to do. He didn't have any medication, and he was really just out of desperation. He went into the medicine cabinet, and there was Midol there. His wife had it, of course. So he grabbed a Midol pill, and in a half an hour, his headache was gone. He didn't have another migraine. So I don't know if this is a usual response to the drug or whether he just happened to find out that it worked for him. So now when he travels around, he always has a bottle of Midol with him. And when he starts to have a migraine headache, he takes a Midol pill and it goes away. For him, it's like a lucky charm. He has something that works for him, and no matter where he is, he has it with him because he won't be without it, because otherwise he wouldn't have anything that would work as well as that does for his migraine headache. So I just wanted to tell you that story. Caffeine can be addictive, and it can cause dependence, and it can cause compulsive use. People who get used to drinking caffeine need it. They become dependent upon it, and they need it. And it is thought that there might be a caffeine misuse disorder, that might be coded as some kind of an illness that a person might have. Instead of being addicted to oxycodone and so forth, you might actually have a diagnosis of a disorder using caffeine. I don't know whether that's come to pass or not. I know I had a friend of mine that always had a soda with her. It was always a Coke. No matter where she was, that Coke was in one hand. And she was a college student, and she had traveled a lot, and she went to New York a lot, and she worked with plays. She tried out for plays. She was very interested in the theater. No matter where she was, there was a bottle of Coke. She could be driving down the street. There was a Coke in the car. She wasn't anywhere unless she had a Coke with her. Now, I don't know if she was addicted to the caffeine in it, whether she just liked the taste, but she looked at it as kind of like a status symbol, I think. She was proud of the fact that no matter where she was, she had her Coke with her. As a matter of fact, she was kind of known for it, and she was proud of it. She would talk to people about it. She would say, well, Pat, I can't go until I grab my Coke. I can't do this unless I have my Coke. So she may possibly have been addicted to it, but I don't know for sure. Now, diet soda can be addictive. As many as 4 diet sodas a day can cause you to be addicted, and your symptoms can be heart problems, weight gain, diuretic, in other words, go to the bathroom a lot, kidney problems, and it increases the aging process. I don't know how it does that, but this is what's listed and what I found out. Withdrawal from caffeine or withdrawal from diet soda can cause anger if the soda is not available. It can cause migraine headaches. It can destroy your liver if you get too much. It can give you yellow teeth. It can give you yellow skin. And 30%, if they have too much caffeine, actually develop heart failure. If you drink as much as 12 cans a day of soda, that equals over 300 cans a month, 4,380 cans a year, and there are stories about women. I haven't seen this, but on television they produce stories about women who have orange teeth and orange skin because of the medical problems they've had by drinking as much as 12 sodas a day. 12 sodas a day is really quite a bit. When you consider all of the caffeine that's in them, 12 sodas a day is really quite a bit. And I know I grab a soda once in a while. Once in a while I like a cold fizzy drink. And so I grab a soda of some kind, but with me, it's usually diet because I'm diabetic. But once in a while, and I do carry soda with me because if I crash, if my blood sugar gets too low, then I've got to have something to raise it quite fast. And so a soda does that quicker than anything. I know you can get the chewable tablets, but those chewable tablets, those glucose tablets that you can get, which you can carry hundreds of them, and you're probably just as well off if you do, if you're diabetic, they only have 4 grams of sugar in them, 4 grams of carbohydrates in them. You can take a half a glass of soda and your blood sugar just rises much faster that way. So I usually keep a soda with me as long as, and I also have some of those pills with me too because I'm a severe diabetic and I do crash occasionally, and then I just grab that soda and drink about a half of it, and it raises me up beyond the danger point. So, I mean, there are times when you really need to have something like that, but you need to watch it and not do too much. So I'm going to close it here. I don't think I have anything else to say about soda. So I'm going to close it here, and the next time I'm going to start talking about marijuana and cannabis use and what the withdrawal symptoms are and how do you know if you have too much. So we'll start that next time. So I'll close it here. Please join me next time.